All right, we are back, everybody. Spurs basketball is right around the corner, and that means it's time for us here at Project Spurs to give you our insight and our best knowledge. Welcome to the Project Spurs Round Table, powered by Project Spurs. I'm your host, Steven Anderson, along with Casey and Paul. We are here to talk Spurs basketball and give you some of our knowledge right up to Wednesday's season opener against the Oklahoma City Thunder. We just wrapped up the preseason, so let's get into it, Paul. Spurs 2-4 finished the record in the preseason. Caused a little Spurs fans to worry a little bit, but are you worried?
No, I mean you can't take a lot out of the preseason. The coaches mainly play their core players about 3/4 a game. Plus, I mean, really, if you look at that last game against Houston, Pop never actually played like the full 10 guys until that final game. He would pretty much a lot of those games he would hold people out, or he would just play them a few minutes and tinker with different lineups just to see where people are fitting in. So no, I mean you can't take a lot away from the preseason. There's some little trends there, like the 3-point shooting is going to be definitely something we might want to talk about. But outside of that, I mean you can't look at the wins and losses and their play overall.
Steven, did you say that you had someone tweet you and ask if the Spurs are going to make the playoffs?
I did. Someone actually tweeted me saying, are they going to make the playoffs? It's preseason, guys. Come on, it's preseason.
There are two kinds of Spurs fans. It's the ones who take it way too seriously and the ones who say, wake me up after the rodeo round trip, right? Mm-hmm. The guys who live and die. I think the ones who are going to have the hardest are the ones who live and die with every single win and loss. Because the analogy I use is trying to change the tire on a car while the car is still moving. Mm-hmm. You are inputting LaMarcus Aldridge, David West. I know the ball movement, and we'll talk about LaMarcus Aldridge here in a second, but through 6 preseason games, it's just getting started. And if you brought this question up to Pop, if you've seen reporters be embarrassed, I would be afraid to even ask what you just asked me to Greg Popovich.
No, I mean, as you guys all know, I'm pretty sure we would get a death stare. We all would get that death stare from Pop, wouldn't we? No, but speaking of preseason, Kyle Anderson, who was in the Summer League MVP, he had a pretty good preseason, but is he ready to be Kawhi Leonard's backup? I say yes. I mean, the guy has played very well. Of course, he has made some mistakes here and there in the preseason, but he seems to me to have proven himself. Casey, what do you think?
I think that Kyle Anderson's a little too raw. I know that he was the Summer League MVP, but a lot of that was built on how he scored. He averaged over 20 points in the Summer League. And what I just see is a guy who, when he goes up against NBA bodies, I know we just kind of discounted the preseason a little bit, but when he goes up against NBA bodies, he scores a lot of his points, if you look at his heat map, in and around the paint. He needs, I don't know if it's more size, more bulk. He still looks like that kid who came out of UCLA, and I know he can put up those kind of numbers in the Summer League, but I don't think we're going to see it during the regular season.
Paul, let me ask you, obviously, Kyle Anderson, Summer League MVP, like we just said, he seems to have improved a lot, but where are some areas of concerns that you see for him?
Well, it's always going to be the defense. He doesn't have the foot speed to match up with some of the threes in the NBA. He pops one up the 4 a few times, but right now it's definitely on defense. He's kind of been okay putting himself in that second, with Manu, with Patty Mills, and Borstel. He really fits in well there, just offensively with the passing. But yeah, defense is really going to be the tail here. If they're playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he has to spell Kawhi for a few minutes, can he really stay with Kevin Durant? There's no way. But then again, he might be going against some second teams, second unit wing defenders, wing players. So, it's going to be interesting. Really, I just think it's always going to be looking at the defense and his foot speed.
You remember, I think it was against, was it the Pistons when he led the team in assists with 5? Yep. After that game, and even at the Rockets game, there were some passes. I think he gave one to Manu. I think it was a no-look pass right there in the lane. It was beautiful. One thing that Pop said that I totally agree about Kyle Anderson is there are some things, the way he sees his court vision, you cannot teach that, and I think that's more than anything why he made the roster.
Okay. One thing that we've noticed here from the Spurs is that obviously their biggest accusation was LaMarcus Aldridge over the summer. He obviously has fit in. It seems to fit in quite nicely. But of course, we talked about Spurs fans. They've been a little bit
reactionary.
Yeah, reactionary to his play. But one thing, Paul, he has obviously, he said to himself, it's going to take some time for me to fit in.
Yeah, and you could definitely see that. There was that Miami game where he just kind of just fit in seamlessly with Tony Parker, with Tim, with Kawhi on the floor. And then there was that Phoenix game where he really struggled. It kind of looked like the tempo slowed down every time they gave him the ball. He was kind of just figuring out, do I post here? Do I kick it out? And and then he saw it, and then he stayed after that game, and he shot shot jumpers for almost like 2 hours after a basketball game, and that was one of the first times that it's happened here in San Antonio that people can remember. And then of course he found it again in that last game against Houston, where he was kind of just flinging the ball over the place. If he saw a double team coming, he would kick it out to his teammates. So it's going to take some time. You're going to see those moments. Like I said, he's a big part of the offense. He and Kawhi are both going to have to figure out when does somebody take the role, when does do I step back and things like that. So, but yeah, it's going to take some time, but he'll figure it out eventually.
There's so much to say about LaMarcus Aldridge. From what I saw in the preseason from his time in Portland, I'm so excited to see how he's going to fit into this offense. We all know that he is the king of the mid-range jumper. And what I love about Greg Popovich is, in this era of analytics-based front offices, he says, I'm going to do it my way. And he brings in David West and LaMarcus Aldridge, who... guys who are we only want to score in the paint or from the three, they would just absolutely wince at LaMarcus and David West coming in. But I think the biggest thing that the biggest impact is he's going to rejuvenate things for Tony, for Tim Duncan. And from what I saw, especially against Houston, you said it, Paul, he can both be incorporated in the ball movement, and he can also play his game and score his way, especially when they see a favorable matchup in the low post. Anytime he's one-on-one with someone, that's basically a favorable matchup. And the most important thing to remember with him is he made more field goals than any other player in the NBA last year, even more than Steph Curry. Yeah.
One thing I'm excited to see is that he's going to have David West next to him. He's going to have obviously Tim Duncan next to him. But one thing I'm interested in, and Paul, I want to get your take on this as well. Is this the new Twin Towers?
With LaMarcus and Tim, yeah, I mean it's a version of it. We got to see how they play before you put somebody in the conversation, Dave Robinson. But yeah, you can see Tim Duncan and LaMarcus. They have such a high basketball IQ, each of them. There was that first game against Miami when they played together. When LaMarcus brought the ball down, he kicks it to Tim. Tim holds it, just tells him to get into the high-low, and then easily just kicks him for the layup. And I also think something we didn't talk about was the impact on Tony Parker. You kind of saw it against Houston the other night. They were running a lot of that pick and pop, he and LaMarcus, and LaMarcus talked about this after the game, where in the first half he was giving Tony was feeding all the open passes to LaMarcus for those pick and pop jumpers, but then in the second half the defender started going toward his way, so then he knew that Tony had the alley and open the lane, so he had about 10 to 12 points that second half, and that's gonna help. Having him in the offense just easily going to help some of the older guys like Tim and Tony. All
right. So it's time for us to look into our crystal ball a little bit, guys. We'll do our best here to kind of look in there and make our predictions a little bit. It was early in the season, so let's start out. First off, I want to get your guys' take here. First question, where do you see the Spurs finishing 1 through 8? Paul?
I'm going to say if divisions don't count this year, I'm going to say the 3 seed. I think it's going to be Golden State and Houston just because they have their teams put together. So I think right now, like the 3 seed.
Casey?
Do we get to pick the eventual NBA champion as well? It is so early right now to make this guy. I mean, they have overhauled everything. I would say I'm right around where Paul is, third or fourth seed, 55, 54 wins, something like that. I know you guys have him a lot more than that.
Yeah, I say, for me, injuries, if everything's fine with injuries, I say they could be as high as 2, actually.
Wow.
They have a very good team. Injuries do take part in a lot of things. Golden State obviously was very lucky last year injury-wise. So I say 1 or 2 for the Spurs. Maybe I say 2. But you know what? That's why we're recording this for fun, and we'll see our predictions at the end of the season. Next one. How many wins do you think they'll get? Casey, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go 54.
Okay, Paul?
I got if not no major injuries, I'm going to say 62.
I'm one ahead of you. I'm going to say 63 with no injuries, nothing like that. But again, we all know the Western Conference is extremely tough. Obviously, from 1 through 8, anything could happen. But that's our take for this Project Spurs Round Table. For Casey, Paul, I'm Steven Anderson. And don't forget to go to ProjectSpurs.com to get all of your Spurs needs. And of course, Paul and I will be doing our very best to give you all of the Spurs action this season. So for all of us here, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next Project Spurs Roundtable.